Hey all, welcome back to Craving Mindz. In the previous episode, I had told you all about how we overcame COVID-19 at home. If you want to have a look at it, then please click on the link above. Nowadays, wherever we go and to whomsoever we talk, everybody is talking about vaccines. So, I thought, why not make a video about vaccines? How did they originate? Let's find out. The story of the first vaccine. We've all heard the supposed story of the first vaccine. It was a vaccine for the smallpox, developed by British physician and scientist Edward Jenner. However, is this true? Well, not exactly. Let's find out the actual story, shall we? Jenner's work went down in history as the first scientific attempt to control an infectious disease through vaccination. But now, Dr. Arthur Boylston has busted the myth of the milkmaid story in a commentary in one of the editions of the New England Journal of Medicine. The myth of the milkmaid. How did smallpox spread? Smallpox was a terrible disease. You'd have high fever, headache, breathing difficulty, body ache, and a sore throat. It would leave people disfigured, and some people even committed suicide. It started in Africa around 200 BCE when the first agricultural settlements started to pop up. Smallpox then spread to the rest of Africa and Europe as trade routes and civilizations grew and interacted, and through the slave trade and European colonizations. The concept of inoculation arrived in America from Africa, India, and China. In fact, in the 1700s, Africans taught their technique for protecting themselves against smallpox to the very European settlers who had enslaved them. But did you know that despite common belief, it was already common knowledge that people who got smallpox didn't get it again by 430 BCE? People only didn't know why. Cures for the smallpox. Treatments included placing people in hot rooms or sometimes cold rooms, abstaining from eating melons, wrapping patients in red cloth, and, according to one 17th century medic, giving 12 bottles of small beer to the patient every 24 hours. There was, however, one genuine cure, variolation, also known as inoculation. What is variolation? The term for taking powdered scabs or even pus from smallpox blisters and putting it into healthy people is called variolation. It is named after the variola virus, which causes the smallpox. How do we know that ancient people had even a basic idea of immunology? We know because people used to store the smallpox crud at warm or cool temperatures for weeks at a time, exposed it to steam, or mixed it with other substances before use. All this would weaken the virus. And this is actually similar to some modern vaccines, such as the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella. Cotton Mather was a New England Puritan minister, prolific author, and pamphleteer. One of the most important people in English-speaking colonial America. One of the reasons he is remembered today is the promotion of inoculation as a means of preventing smallpox and other infectious diseases. In 1706, Mather's congregation gave him as a gift an enslaved African who he called ONESIMUS. As a standard question of the day, he asked ONESIMUS if he had had smallpox yet. ONESIMUS replied both with a yes and a no. He explained that when he was a child, the pus from a smallpox victim had been scraped into his arm with a thorn, and he was now forever immune from it. He said that it was a common practice in his tribe. Now, after learning that a similar process was being done in Turkey, Mather wrote to the Royal Society of London about how he had heard of the method. Then, after a few years, when ONESIMUS was released, his name faded away from public records. However, during a smallpox epidemic that had struck Boston, Mather urged others to try the inoculation method. Even though Mather was a respected person in Massachusetts, only one physician, Zabdiel Boylston, had agreed to inoculate against the smallpox. He had inoculated 2 African slaves and his own son, and this was truly shocking news to area doctors and councilmen. The conspiracy theory. William Douglas, the only man in Boston with an actual medical degree, thought that this was a conspiracy. He thought the Africans were trying to kill their masters by tricking them into infecting themselves with smallpox. A local newspaper belonging to Benjamin Franklin's overbearing older brother agreed and spread word of the alleged conspiracy. The epidemic continued for 2 more years, and the results of a survey were that only 2% of people who were inoculated against the smallpox died, whereas 14.7% of people who were not inoculated died. Variolation was introduced to Britain after 1717 when Lady Mary Worley Montagu wrote a series of letters to her friend, which included the topic of variolation in the Ottoman Empire of Turkey. Knowing that variolation was effective in Turkey, a plan was made to try it out in Britain. They took prisoners and orphan children to test out the method, but fortunately, they didn't get any serious illness, only a mild case of the smallpox, and it didn't even leave scars. So variolation was proved not to be very fatal, and the royal family was inoculated soon after. Farmer Benjamin Jesty's contribution. Benjamin Jesty believed in the tale that milkmaids who got cowpox were immune from smallpox. So, during a smallpox epidemic in the west of England in 1774, he decided to try something. He scratched some pus from cowpox lesions on the udders of a cow into the skin of his wife and sons. None of them contracted smallpox. It was only 22 years later after this that Edward Jenner did a similar experiment and got the same result. Benjamin Jesty's work became known only many years after its discovery, whereas Jenner's name went down in history. Smallpox remains the only infectious disease humans have successfully eradicated from the earth. Edward Jenner's experiment. In 1796, after gathering some circumstantial evidence from farmers and milkmaids, Jenner decided to try the experiment, a potentially fatal experiment, on a child. He took some pus from cowpox lesions on the hands of a young milkmaid, Sarah Nems, and scratched it into the skin of 8-year-old James Phipps. After a few days of mild illness, he recovered sufficiently for Jenner to inoculate the boy with matter from a smallpox blister. He did not develop smallpox, nor did any of the people he came into close contact with. Although the experiment worked, by today's standards, it was ethically problematic. And it was this experiment that led Edward Jenner to be known as the father of immunology. What are live attenuated vaccines? They are those that contain a weakened form of the viruses that cause the diseases. Examples include the vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella, and the Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccine. I hope you now have a clear idea of how vaccines originated. See you in the upcoming weeks with some other interesting topics. Do pour in your suggestions in the comments. Until then, bye-bye and take care. If you haven't liked, subscribed and hit the bell notifications button yet, then please do.